it's not about being perfect, it's about being prolific.
What is going on, everyone? It is Blake VP back again with another one. This is MARQUITA Amwa. She is a Chicago native. She's lived in New York with me, and she is a balancer of everything. She does multiple things, from hosting a podcast. She's a screenwriter. She has a blog. She does so many different things. So I think it will be very valuable to bring her in today, and we can just hop right in. So just introduce yourself. Just tell us who you are and what do you stand by.
Yeah, so MARQUITA, I'm actually a Bronx native. So I'm originally from New York City. But yes, we met in New York. But now I live in Chicago, like you said. So I have a day job here. I help Southside organizations, which is really dope and noble work, especially during this time. But yes, I have podcasts where I just talk. I just talk a lot, and I was like, oh, I'm going to record it. And that confidence has led to about 25 episodes now. I don't know if people still want to hear me, but I still do it. And then I write. That's the main thing. So yeah, you introduced me very well. I'm excited to be here and talk.
Well, thank you for being here. I think I want to dive right into the podcast that you did. Is you're 25 episodes in. What do you want people to feel when they go on your overall podcast?
I think I want people to feel a few things, but for me, I think it's just like a reprieve, so to speak. So I'm never gonna sit here and act like I'm a political podcast. I'm diving into deep stuff. It's usually me just asking my friends questions. You know, I constantly have dope conversations with people like yourself included. And I think, how can I share that knowledge? Or I'll have a really cool conversation about ghosting, and someone will have a drastically different opinion from me.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, I should record that because your opinion is so wrong. I want someone else to back me up. So that's how it started. I also was trying at that time to push past just writing. I love writing, and that's my preferred form of media, but in the way that our world is now, people want to digest things that don't make them work a lot. And some people just don't like reading. So I was like, okay, I'm going to make this podcast. Some people, like 3 people told me I had a nice voice. Cool. And here we are. It's very homemade. I do it on my Mac. I have
There you go.
I record on GarageBand and sit for hours trying to edit, and I'm sure there's an easier way to do it, but I'm not an audio editor. But people have
That's really
been
cool too. Like what you're mentioning is just taking those resources of what you already have instead of trying to over engineer it. I think that specifically when you're trying to start a business, as somebody says that I want to start a clothing line, I have to go and buy a whole machine. I want to go buy the inks. I want to go buy the shirts. I want to go hire a graphic designer and doing everything instead of just leveraging what you already have and just going from it. And then once it just starts gaining more and more traction, then it enables you to kind of expand it, where now you're going from a Mac to a whole Mac laboratory, and you got all the computers you need and all the microphones you need too.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm not trying to be something that I'm not. And I also know that when it comes to creating or business or anything, sometimes you just have to do it. Like, you definitely should plan. And I planned. In fact, with the podcast, I started it in 2018, did a run of about 20 episodes or so, or 21 episodes. Life got crazy, put it on hiatus. Then being in here for quarantine, I was just thinking about the things I like to do, my writing, my art, and brought back the podcast as something that brought me joy. So I restarted it. And now I have 3 episodes since I brought it back. And people have been really receptive. I planned more. I spaced out my guests, my topics. So it's definitely a better iteration this time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I was just like, I'm going to try this thing, even though I don't really know how to do it, because I think there's power in failing. Like, if you fail in something, it's okay to try again. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it again. I also think there's a balance. You should know when to let something go.
Right.
But I was doing well by it. I enjoyed it. I wanted to try it again. So I'm gonna try it again.
I think that's cool too, right? Like I've had so many different projects that I've been working on because I'm just, if I have an idea, I'm just going to make it happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then I also realize I lose interest in a lot of things. And when I
Mm,
lose interest in it, is it going to be something that I want to pick back up or not? Right. And let's say, for example, this YouTube channel. I
mhm,
post a video once a week and I took a month hiatus. And you said
mm.
something that was interesting where you're like, all right, I went on a hiatus and I decided to come back. So just talk kind of through the decision making process of when you want to let something go or when do you want to just pick it back up and continue.
Yeah, that's a great thing, especially because people constantly tell you with social media, all this stuff, it has to be consistent. Like you want to get a lot of followers on Instagram, you have to post every single day at the exact same time because you're going to get on more people's feeds and they're going to like your stuff. And that's how the algorithm works. But I think also that makes you put stuff out that maybe may not be of best quality if you're trying to over and over again just gain the traction, get the notoriety. So for me, it's like when I was doing the podcast for the first 21 episodes, majority of them were decent. I got to a point in my life where there were so many other things going on that were more pertinent than the podcast. And I didn't want to put out shitty work. That's just something I didn't want to do. And I knew that it was better for me to just stop, take care of myself. And I did let it go. I didn't think I would pick it back up. I was just like, oh, that's something I did, and that's cool. And then I started thinking, so it's been almost a year since I stopped recording. And then I sat down, was thinking about things I could do in this meantime as we sit at home. I'm thankful to still have a job, but I was like, oh, I really liked podcasting. I want to do it again. But now I know all the things I failed at before
Hmm.
because I did it. I wouldn't have known that. I almost had to go through it the first time to realize you shouldn't be calling your guests 2 days before you record. That's just like not what you should be doing. So now this time around, I put a form out. I had people tell me what they would want to talk about. So now I have an Excel sheet that has all these people's names, their emails,
Yeah.
and the things they want to talk about, which make it easier for me if I'm in a rut. What do I want to talk about this week? Now I can go to that Excel sheet and see all these topics people have given me, and it's been
Yeah.
immensely helpful.
That's awesome. I actually thought the opposite. Like I'm the guy that would, I don't want to be like, I don't want to say, this is going to sound interesting, right? I don't want to say I'm the guy that makes shitty content, but I'm the guy that will churn stuff out knowing that it's not of the best quality. Simply, but the only way I'll do that is if there's intent behind it, right? Like
Mm,
I will post 100 photos of myself that may not be the best photos, but if the intent was to get a message across and that message gets across, then I'm going to do it. Because I've noticed for myself, right? Like with YouTube videos, I will edit it to the death and
mhm,
then it will never come out. Comparative to, I can take it, I could drag it, I could put it in a template, I could churn them out, and then now I'm getting a message across in that time span where I'm churning out tons and tons of like different ideas. But
mhm.
also from a reference perspective, right? Like I dropped 10 videos in the span of X amount of time. I can go back to it because now you're getting to that point where like you're saying this Excel sheet that you're making. Once it just
Mhm.
becomes a problem, then you're enhancing it and now you're looking back like, wow, I was able to churn that out so fast. In addition to it, look at how better it got. And then once you start to get the people that are around it, they will understand, right? Like you made X amount of videos, but now it's we wait a little longer and now we'll get that bigger content, but I have that bigger traction instead
Yeah.
of investing all that time in like a really great video that like 5 people see.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I think there's a balance because I think I did it your way the first time I did the podcast. I was just like, I'm just going to record myself talking, even though I don't necessarily have plans and I had no idea how I was going to do it. Like, for example, I had an episode where I talked through my beauty regime, and that that should have been a video, like point blank. Nobody wants to hear things. You want to see things if it's visual.
Yeah.
And that should have been a video. I made it a podcast, but now I know, okay, this is better to put on video. But at that time, I was doing exactly what you're saying. I was just putting content out because people wanted to get it week to week. So I think there is a balance, right?
Mhm.
And I think once you get better, so to speak, you can become pickier, and whoever is in your fan base will enjoy that. You know, we see it
Yeah.
with singers and actors. You know, in the beginning they're maybe taking every role just so that you can recognize their face. Then they move on, you're like, oh, okay, you're being pickier, I enjoy that, but now I'm already a fan. So I do think
Yeah.
there's a balance.
For sure, is a balance. It's really interesting, like to take that perspective and figure out like what works for you, right?
Mm,
Because there are people it does work for, and other people it absolutely does not. So
yeah.
just figuring
Yeah.
out what type of
Like
person.
I could never be a social media influencer. Could never do it. The idea of having to put out content every single day, I just, I sometimes, we were just talking about this. I forget to look at my phone or look at a text. The idea of having to put a picture out there every day because that beats the algorithm, it's not meant for me. But I appreciate everyone else who does it because they give me stuff to scroll past.
Yeah, they give you the content you need. The content viewer and the content creator, right? Like a happy medium. I'm like
Yeah.
that person too, where and that's one thing with check-in with what I'm doing is there's just so much content, and figuring out like a day we do like 80 to 100 reposts a day, but then the story there's not that many posts. And
Mm,
now you're sitting here, it's like, dang, like could I really be the person that's posting on my personal page, my business page, doing story reposts, going across it? It's exhausting. And
wow.
it really is, especially if you're like that person that just wants to make a good item,
Mm,
good service, or good everything. Now you're focused on what the actual rollout is. It's important too, right? And I have tons of friends because I'm the person that does it too. I just dropped a photo 2 weeks ago, but the one prior to that was probably like 2 or 3 months. But my
mm,
story is active. Everybody's gonna be on it. People interact with me, and it's very engaging. And I'm more than certain my page could do way better if I did it. But it's also seeing like where your head aligns too,
mm.
because I have no aspirations to be that person. Like I gotta post at 12 p.m. and then it's
Right.
gonna be a picture of me like posing. It's like just not me. Like I just wouldn't do it. I could go out and then just not tell anybody that I went out because
Yes, I can do that as
private.
well.
Yeah.
I don't know. It makes me think there's something. Uh, I read an article recently. One of the writers on Insecure, she said, you know, it's not about writing perfect things. You just need to keep doing it. It's not about being perfect. It's about being prolific. And
Mm,
basically, she went on to say, just keep writing, even if it's bad stuff. And I think that can apply to everything because the good thing you put out then becomes better if you do it again, and then that better thing then becomes like great. I don't know the hierarchy of good words,
yeah.
but you know, it just keeps getting better the more you keep doing it. So I think you have to let go of perfectionism, which sometimes is hard for me, especially when it comes to my writing. But sometimes I'm just like, okay, I need to send this thing out so you can read it, so you can tell me how to get better. I can't
Right.
hold on to everything I've ever created because then it will never get better because it's the same eyes looking at it and no one else is giving me their perspective. So there's definitely a balance.
Yeah, for sure. It's just really it's so interesting. Like I couldn't be that guy. That like that person that does it every day.
I couldn't.
And that even goes behind the identity of what your brand represents and what you represent too, right? Like you can have the podcast, and the podcast is posting every single day, but you're
Right.
not on your personal life. And then it's like I'm getting that stuff out. I'm pushing all the content, but like my personal page, you don't know what's going on.
Right. Yeah. And I think sometimes I look at celebrities or like these IG influencers and they do this balance where they they let people think they know their lives, but they don't.
Yeah.
sometimes you'll go on the page and you're like, oh, you post pictures every single day, but the captions don't say anything about your life,
Yeah.
or this is very much just for me to come look at how pretty you are, which is not a bad thing. Get these ad sponsorships and move on.
Yeah.
And sometimes I appreciate those people because you still don't really know what's going on. You can tell this is a business. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm like, I couldn't be anyone's social media content person.
Right.
Please don't hire me to do that. Although I have been hired to do that in the past. Do not hire me anymore.
You'd be great at it, you know. You keep going. You'd be like, we're not posting that today. I even saw the dynamic of this girl. I'm not gonna say names just because when we go viral from this video, I don't need her coming back to me. But she was filming a really emotional video, and you know how you do the B-roll and people film you and they play a music over it and they do a
Yes.
voiceover. She's crying in 3 seconds, but she has her phone up and she's talking into the phone as
Uh,
she's crying.
yeah.
And I just can't process it where
Right.
it's, you know what I need to do? I need to film this. But it works. Like people love it. And I'm watching the video because I never really thought about it. I'm like, man, it's so inspirational. She's really going in. And they're showing the B-roll. Then I watched it again. I'm like, wait a minute. Why is she filming this? You know?
I think that a lot. When people take videos of, I think this a lot for crying, also big romantic things.
Yeah.
Like if it's just the couple at home, and then I see a video of you two like hugging or dancing in the house, I always think, so who thought to record it?
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. Any
Right,
any fun moment I've ever had, if I do not hire a photographer, there's no documentation of
right,
that. Because if I'm out at a party, I'm not over here texting my friends. And that was another thing too. My friend had a gathering and he was telling everybody to come because it's so fun. I don't do that. And no matter how fun the party is, if it's that fun, I will never text people and tell them to come because I'm
wow,
occupied. Like I'm there
right,
having fun. I'm there in the moment. And
yeah,
but some people, that is their identity, where they identify. And I've been around people where they're like, you take somebody out to eat. Like if I take a girl out on a date, she got to take a photo of the food
right,
and post it before like even enjoying it, and like
right.
eat the food.
Are we old? Are we judging people? Are we?
Is that you?
No, that's not.
You phonies first.
No, no, that is not me. Um, it's so weird too because I went to a party, I want to say sometime last year, Christmas time. And I remember I put a post up and I was like, I'm sorry, y'all. I didn't take any pictures of me at the party. I know you wanted to know I had a good time. Here's a picture of me in the Santa hat. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. Here you go. And a lot of people messaged me and was like, no, that's actually real. Like
Yeah,
people are not just at parties. And I'm willing to say, if I am heavily documenting an outing I'm not enjoying
you're
myself.
not. You're
If
not.
if I put one post up or you see maybe one boomerang, that's probably because I took a moment. I wanted to let you know I was out. But after that, if I'm heavily documenting,
Mhm.
please text me and say, like, do you want another option tonight?
Now here's the question though too, right? On your personal page, one, are your best friends on your page a lot?
Like on my Instagram, like
Yeah,
if you
on
go
your
to
Instagram,
my
are
pictures,
your best friends on your page a lot?
not really, no.
Okay. So the second part to that was going to be, if so, was it like a staged photo or was it in the actual moment? Because
No,
that
most
I've
of
noticed
my
that.
photos are of me. This is actually something. So I went through most of college without social media.
Oh,
I
wow.
I did not get. I had Snapchat, whatever, but I did not get Instagram until my senior year.
Really? Okay.
So I actually enjoyed. There's really no documentation of me doing anything
Yeah.
because I wasn't on social media. So my friends were, but we just didn't really take pictures to the point where my mom complained to me.
Yeah, exactly.
you're not going to remember these times if you don't take pictures.
Yeah, 100%. I went on a hike yesterday with a couple of my friends, and I was like, take a picture. They're like, what? I said, take a picture. We don't take enough photos, and we probably hang out with each other. Well, with quarantine, we don't. But but before everything, I saw them like 4 or 5 times a week, and we do
No,
something
yeah,
every single day. But you would never know, and we
yeah,
need to document that. I've been around. I went from New York to go to DC to go to the dentist just in one day, and then I came back to go to Brooklyn for my
mm,
friend's event, but it's not documented, and
right,
that's like a really big deal. And then in 20 years or like 5 months, when I forget about it, then it's
right.
just really it fades away. So that's why it's just seeing is how can you separate yourself as a brand, and how can you just really more so say like what needs to be documented and what is the image of what I'm trying to portray.
Yeah. And I think for me, I work really hard at not trying to be like, it's weird because I get weird about self-promoting myself, not
Yeah,
self-promoting myself, but yes, self-promotion, because it's not natural to my personality.
yeah,
So my personality, like I'm like you said, I'll go places, we're not recording. We don't know what's happening. You don't know where I went. There are times where friends will be like, "Were you there that night?" Like we don't remember because we didn't take any pictures. Um but when you have a podcast, when you have a website, if you're trying to get into certain industries, you do have to self promote. So then I have to fight myself and be like, yeah, it's okay to post these things that you're doing, even though maybe right now everyone's focused on the news, but I'm going to post this thing, this
yeah.
podcast that I put out, because that's content I made that I want people to digest.
Hmm. It's a level of sensitivity. It's
Hmm.
adapting to what's going on too, because one of my friends was going to drop a music video, and it was the day everybody was protesting in Los Angeles.
Mm.
And he goes, "Should I reschedule it?" I'm like, 100%, you should
Yeah.
reschedule it because there's a time and a place, and odds are everything that's going on has a peak in terms of what it's relevant
Mm.
versus the amount of attention that's directly affected by it.
Mm.
Whereas protests are very important and people are going to always talk about it. However, there's going to be a lifespan of the discussion of how important protests are, but it's going
Mm.
to continue to be successful throughout that. And if you're trying to post something while it's a hot topic, people are either going to not pay attention to you, or you're going to get criticized for it because now you're antagonizing that cause and taking away from it. So,
Yeah. And I think that's when sometimes it's hard if you have music or things like that. I think especially for creatives, that's when you have to, in a sense, tailor, like pivot your work so that it fits whatever's going on in that time. So, for my podcast, that's why the one I dropped on Friday, yes, I wanted to talk about mindfulness, but I made us talk about it within the scope of everything going on right now. So it
yeah,
feels relevant. It feels like you should be listening to it because there are very real things that concern this.
yeah,
But at the same time, it's not directly about that
mhm,
hot topic, because I do believe people need breaks. You don't want to constantly watch the news and things like that. But people also feel guilty. So if they were watching a music video that had nothing to do with it, they'd be like, oh no, I didn't do enough. So there is this fine balance. I have a friend who was going to drop a web series this month, and
mhm,
then she was like, yeah, we're pushing it to July. That's
yeah,
just the right thing to do. And I was like, you know what? That makes a lot of sense.
yeah, 100%. I think that it's the sweet spot for everything is not having to have a disclaimer. If you have to have a post and you do a disclaimer on it, in my opinion, it's very difficult for it, right? Like I'm gonna drop something probably today or tomorrow, but it's not gonna have a disclaimer because the way it's done, it's tactful where it has it. Compared to one of my friends, she's an influencer and she posts like lotions and a whole bunch of skincare products,
I said it
and
was
and she really has to get the brand off, but she has to do a disclaimer because when she doesn't, the comments are like, are you serious? Like, you're really washing your face in a time like this? And it sounds ridiculous, but people get really furious because
Yeah.
of that. And the approach to her, I'm like, the one thing that you didn't do is you didn't really brand it as like holistically you're a
Mhm.
lifestyle. Instead of you're just being seen as a product. And people can't be products because you either like the product, you damage it, you return it, people don't like it.
Right.
I don't know if that analogy made sense, but I just made it up. Um,
I nodded along to it. I think it was
yeah,
good.
there you go. But that's another reason why I don't really edit. Like these interviews, I edit them obviously, but I don't cut it in certain things because you're really speaking from the heart. And when
Right.
you start to just kind of adjust and critique it, I think it takes away from the authenticity of it.
Yes.
I don't want to surround myself by
Yeah.
people that are not authentic.
Right. And
Mm,
that's at the base level, that's what sells, realness. Like even though a lot of these things, the lotions, the Fashion Nova ads, all of
yeah,
that, we know are fake. But if you sell it in a way as if, like you said, this is my lifestyle, this is who I am, I don't care, I'm unapologetic, people gravitate to that because they want to be that. They want to be real in their own lives. So if they see someone else doing that authentically, they're like, oh, okay,
yeah,
let me go do that. Let me go follow that person. And people get mad. It's interesting because during this time, the same people probably commenting on her lotion ads before all of this popped off are probably like, oh, where do I go get that from? Or that sounds great. But that's kind of where you have to figure out, how do I adapt who I am for all
yeah.
time?
While
And
still
that's
being authentic.
right,
Yeah,
right. That disclaimer line is real. If you have to put a disclaimer, then
yeah. And it's like I can't stop wiping my tears. So thankfully I have these. It's just insensitive, you know. But if you're just somebody that's like really like to relate it in a real way, if I were to do it, would be like with all that's going on, the one
mhm,
thing I genuinely enjoy doing is my skincare because
right.
that gives me time to practice. This is one that I genuinely use
Yep.
instead of like disclaimer. I know that mm,
Yeah. Because now it's like, so you know that this isn't great. So why am I going to interact?
yeah, 100%. The other thing that you mentioned too are your little failures. Your little
Mm.
failures to get better too. What is your favorite failure that you've had to this date, and what did you kind of learn from that?
My favorite failure, I would say, so in 2017, I started a book. I wrote about 120 pages of this book. It was like wildfire. One day I was mad about something and I was like, I'm gonna write a tell-all book.
You
It was
wrote 120 pages in a day?
no, it also was not a tell-all book. It became fiction. I took it seriously after a
Oh,
day.
I love
Um, but it started off in pettiness. And then I was like, oh, actually this is kind of good. Let me let that go so it could be good.
it.
So I wrote about 120 pages within, I want to say, 3 months. Um, I wrote like the first 50 in a week. And then I wanted to take care of the storylines and things like that. Um, I stopped writing because writing a book is hard.
Yeah,
But also I stopped because I didn't know where the characters were leading me. And when I write stories, I mostly write character driven stories. I don't usually, I can write other stuff, but my genre isn't usually like, a plot driven story. You're not going to get a Stranger Things out of me where the whole plot is that there's some crazy paranormal stuff happening.
yeah,
And then the characters come into that. Usually for me, I write stories that are the characters are doing things in their lives and now these are the consequences of whatever things they did.
right.
So I was finding it hard to continue writing it. The characters weren't really moving me, but I would reread it every 6 or so months. So I stopped writing it in 2017, and then I would keep rereading it.
Mm.
And through rereading it, I would edit it every now and again. So I would go through it. Okay, let me edit this. Oh, this person doesn't sound good anymore. I did that basically for 3 years. I've been doing that for 3 years. And then when I was in here thinking, in here as in the house, thinking about all the things, all the things that I should be doing during this time, because yes, this time is very tumultuous, but also have never had moments in my life where I've been told to just sit down and stay home.
Yeah.
Um, so I was like, oh, I want to go back to writing. I thought about screenplays for a while, but for some reason in my head, they seemed much harder than they really were. I
Yeah.
was like, I've never written in that format before. I don't know how to do that. And kind of what we were talking about earlier, I was like, I'm just going to do it. I'm thinking too much about it. I'm just going to do it. I'm not going to put it out there. I'm not going to send it to a producer, but I'm just going to do it and see what happens.
Yeah.
So I wrote a short script, sent it to two of my friends who read scripts all the time because they're actors. And they came back with all the technique. They were like, everything needs to be in present tense. This is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. But the story is good. And I was like, okay, great. So I was like, I don't really care about that story. I just did that so I could write a script. But now that I got that out the way, I do want to write stories. So I went back to the book and ended up converting the first 2 chapters into a script. And I think that it reads so much better than
Yeah.
it did on the page. And both are good in their own right. But I think that was what was always missing. I wanted the book to have some visual aspect to it. And
Mm-hmm.
having to, when you write a script, you have to talk about the visuals in a way that you do in a book in prose, but you can get away with having other people say things. But when you write a script, you can't have the main character be like, it is a sunny day. Like, no.
You could. It just be a bad book.
It would be really bad. So that was a failure of mine. I mean, that book will probably, I mean, I don't know, but it probably will not be completed.
Yeah.
But now I turned it into a screenplay, sent it to a few of my friends. They really enjoyed it. And, one of my friends ended up being like, actually, I would love to read a few of your things, sent it to her. And she actually works at a production company. Don't
Oh,
know, don't know if anything's going to come from it, but I think a lot about timing and alignment, and had, I not put back out the podcast. She had no idea I was writing screenplays. She saw the podcast, was like, oh, this seems cool. Can I talk to you? I mentioned the screenplays. Oh, send that my way too. I actually work at a production company.
wow.
So it's one of those things where it could go nowhere, but I do think there is meaning in the fact that before 3 weeks ago, this screenplay did not exist. But I had this book that I wrote in 2017 that I never finished, but that ended up becoming one of the things I sent to her. I
Yeah.
wouldn't have been able to send her 120 pages of a book. What would she
Yeah.
have done with that? But I was able to condense it into 30 pages of a screenplay,
That's
and
awesome.
it was able to send it to her. So I think that would probably be my favorite failure that not a lot of people know about. Like
That's awesome.
I don't really tell people, oh yeah, I wrote this half-written book.
Thanks for sharing that. I think it reminded me a lot about you're gonna have to help me out with the author's name. I think it's Tommy Adeyemi for Children of Blood and Bone.
Yes. I don't.
So
That's how you say her name. We could be wrong. We're sorry.
yeah, we're sorry, but we're inspired, and I think that story is cool because what she did is she's essentially our age, where I think she's like 24, 25. And she was just writing, and she put together a whole bunch of information, and then there was not too much structure behind it, but she decided to take that leap and then adjusted it and had the book published. And we read it together. There's all those different lists of accolades on how that book is doing, and then they got signed for a movie, and then they got
Yep.
2, 3, 4 sequels to
Yep.
it, a whole trilogy collection that comes from it, just
Uh-huh.
off of the principle of, I'm going to release this book. And if
Right.
you look at the book, a traditional first book that somebody releases is not about 600 pages. It's
Yeah.
not. So that goes to show you that that's really authentic. And even from what you're saying too, it's like, just keep building it out and let's see where it goes. It just completely like clicked in my head. So I think that
Yeah,
that's really
that's my favorite failure so far. And I have, the thing about it is when I wrote it in 2017, I was like, something's gonna come of this. I just don't know what. Like, sometimes you land on a story, you're like, this is important. Um, but I think I'm starting to finally be like, it's okay to let it go, and you just have to keep producing it. I just keep thinking about what that writer said. It's not about being perfect, it's about being prolific. And
okay.
you just keep putting this work out there. And if you are dedicated to it, something's going to come of it. And I also think you talked about our age, and I always think we're so old. Like, I'm like,
Yeah,
damn, like I'm turning 26 this year. I'm old.
yeah,
But I'll look up people and maybe they didn't hit their quote unquote big break or stride until they were 30, 31. But everyone has the same story, which is they were grinding for years before that.
yeah, for sure. I'm excited to see like where everybody goes. And it's positive because everybody's form, and like people go viral and people have their super sporadic forms of accomplishment. But even if it's like 5 new followers or anything like that, it's more than what you had before. And you didn't think you would get there. So I'm
Right.
super excited to see it too. Which brings me to the next topic, since that was not a
Okay.
smooth transition. How can we find you so we can get you more exposure? Where can people find you?
So my podcast, Don't Hold Back, is on SoundCloud. I can send you a link. It's also on Apple Podcasts. Y'all can subscribe. And my website is called Words Are Things. I can send you a link as well. And it's a organizations.org. I am the entire organization.com was taken. Um, so that's where a lot of my work is. And hopefully in the near future, there will be more ways for me to show you where my stuff is. Oh, another thing, I always forget to plug this. Myself and two of my friends who co-founded this magazine, it's called Mint Magazine. And we basically highlight a lot of young minority professionals. So I can send you that link as well.
Nice. There you go. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm going to put all the information in the description below. And so thank you so much. Anything else before we close out?
No, I enjoyed being a guest on your YouTube.
Yes. And I'll check you out too, and I'll share it with everybody. So thank you so much.
Thanks.